Hi everyone, thank you for joining me again. Today I'm going to colour a new picture from RJ Hampson's Around the World. I have already put a little bit of green onto some of these pages but not coloured anything else. If you haven't seen my other videos, I've talked about how I'm going to colour this book from front to back in order. And the page that I'm up to now is called Promenade. So I'm going to start off by using some connector pens, and this is how my connector pens are stored. They're in a big plastic tub. In here I have a variety of different water-based markers. I have some of the Crayola colours of the world in here. Here in Australia we have a department store called Kmart, and they have a home brand called Anko, and this is just a cheap set of water-based markers that have a brush tip at one end and a fine tip at the other. So they've been thrown in here with this, and these are another set of water-based markers that were Anko brand. They're not necessarily full sets, they're just what I've got left in here that I've thrown in here, and they're all in a bit of a state, but you'll hear me fossicking around in there in the background. I'm not up to speed with how to edit yet, so I'm afraid you'll have to put up with some of these things until I get a handle on how to make a more polished, finished video for you. Anyway, that is those, so we'll get started. I've previously said that I don't plan pages, and I don't really. I've got absolutely no idea what I'm going to do with this one. I don't plan to have Mr. Fogarty looking consistent through the book, and his clothes and so on are not going to be the same through the book. So each time I start a new page, I basically just do whatever it is that appeals to me on that day. I'm actually going to start with the life preserver here. And for some reason, I think that that should just have red on it. So quite often what will happen for me is that there will be an element on the page that stands out to me, that draws my eye, or I'm really interested in. I tend to like a lot of small details, and I find, you know, there will be just one part of the design that really draws my attention, and that might be where I start, and then that tends to then suggest the way that the rest of the page should go. So we've got a bit of red on there. Now this may be nothing to do with the way the rest of the picture turns out, but sorry for knocking the camera there. That's where I'm choosing to start today. I think that's what that is there, that's part of it. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to work out which parts belong where. So a bit of red there, and that will do for now. I think I might start with Mr. Fogarty himself, and I've been really liking this particular blue for some reason at the moment. So I'm going to give him a jacket in that colour blue again. So you can see I'm not colouring that solidly, and I'm actually going to bring in a little bit of water. So I need to make sure I've got my paper towel nearby and handy. Let's get rid of that lid off of there. Now this is the water brush that gets really wet, So I'm just going to do that for now. And come back with the actual pen. And that brush really is quite a wet water brush. Some of them just don't seem to release a lot of water at any given time, whereas others are very wet. Now I mix things up a little bit here. If I don't want to have too deep or solid a colour, I'll play around with just doing those little dots there, because when they blend, they're going to produce a lighter area than, say, this bit here where I've worked more solidly. And for this first layer, I really just need to get rid of the white of the paper, because I will come back. I very rarely just do one layer on an area, so I'll come back to that when it's a bit drier. I'm not going for a sort of graphic design look with solid colour, and I like that variance where you get some lights and darks. So I'm going to let that bleed into there for now. I'm not sure what colour his vest is going to end up, but it will be different to the jacket. But that's okay, just to let that blend in there. So I'm just working fairly quickly to get that connector pen blended before it dries too much. Okay, and that's probably about as far as that's going to go. And I think every page goes through ugly stages. I watch A Cluttered Life on YouTube, and she quite often talks about how pages go through that ugly stage where you really don't know what you're going to do with it. Quite often you feel like you could give up on it, but usually, you know, you keep working through and it ends up panning out okay. Alright, so I'm going to use this Anko pen here. This one has got a brush tip and a fine tip, and I like the brush tip myself. You can see that that's not the same, obviously nowhere near the same colour on the barrels, but the colour is actually very similar. Now I know that ahead of time because I've worked with these pens an awful lot, and so I don't need to do any swatching. I just know that they're going to work together because I've used them together so much in the past. Now, you might be able to see where I've got all that paper, that wet paper there, it's starting to peel a little bit and come up. And it really doesn't take much for that to happen sometimes. These particular markers do come back and work over wet areas quite well, so that's going to work okay on there. So we'll leave that one to dry. I've just realised that this here is part of the lapel on his coat. So let's just... We'll leave that to do its own thing. It's starting to really bleed into there, so I really don't know if I'm going to want that colour in there, but it's happening, and if it becomes a problem, I just have to work with that afterwards. It's in the shadow of the jacket. So we'll let that do its thing there for a bit. I'm thinking with that jacket, he might look nice with some trousers that are a deeper blue. So I don't usually like to work with the darker colours in the connector pens too often. I like the medium or mid-range because you know, if you go too dark too soon, you're limited in how you can lighten those things up later. You can do it. I mean, coloured pencils do work with it, and you can always use an acrylic paint pen. But I prefer not to limit my choices too soon about what I can do. And that's why I like to work in the mid-range of colours. You know, to start off with. I guess what I'm trying to say is it helps to not limit your options too soon. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I don't really have a method whereby I do the same thing all the time. I'm always trying out different ways to get these things to work. And it's going to be darker under his little waistcoat here, so put some darks in there. I have a newfound respect for people that do colouring videos on YouTube because it really is difficult to chat and colour. I guess that you're using two different parts of your brain at the same time. And that's why it struggles a little bit to get the right words. And hence lots of umming and ahhing and erring. Okay, that's quite wet, so I can't really do an awful lot more with that at the moment. So perhaps we'll have a look at Mr. Fogarty's Lady Friend. Now these are really vibrant, cartoony colours, so it's going to be another bright picture. I'm thinking that I would like some pinks, but we're really limited with the pinks in the Faber-Castell connector pens. They're not necessarily all colours that I like an awful lot. I've got a few of them that are all joined up there. And I'm thinking that I'd like a bit of a dusky pink. So what I'm going to do, this is as close as I come to swatching, is to just do that on a bit of paper and check. Some of these colours that I don't use a lot of on a regular basis, I forget what they look like. Now those two barrels are different, but the colours look very similar on the paper. There's a particular pink I'm looking for. Let's try this one. Yeah, that might be nice. I think we'll do her jacket in this colour. It's more like a peachy apricot sort of pink. Sometimes I'll get these colours down and then realise that I've, you know, done something a bit ugly or a bit of a clanger. So I'll use the coloured pencil to come back and either, you know, highlight it or lessen the colour, or sometimes try to change the colour completely. With these smaller areas, you don't need to worry too much about streaking. So, you know, I'm sort of colouring rather haphazardly there. However, in the bigger areas, I'll show you how I usually use the marker pens. So I'm thinking, I've already got that pilling up. I'm thinking I like the look of the lapel actually being darker than the jacket itself. So just let that dry, because when you come back and keep putting layers on top, it will also darken it. And I've just realised that I've forgotten her sleeve there. That sleeve is slightly behind here, so I'll just make that a little bit darker. And of course you have to keep making judgments as you go along, because the markers do dry a little bit lighter than they're going on, so you know, you have to keep re-evaluating the strength of the colour as you go along. Okay, so now I need colour for her skirt, and I'm thinking I don't really want to introduce a whole new colour and be contrasting with that. I'm thinking I'd like something that tones with it. Yep, that will do. So with these bigger areas, I'm not going to really want, you know, lots of messy marks and lines in there. That skirt wouldn't have that. So I'm actually just going to go in long sweeping lines in the direction of the folds of the fabric. And I'm going to try as best as I can not to overlap too much, and keep going back over the top of it at this stage. I just want to do that first pass like that. Now, what I've found with this is that it's really hard to do big areas and you know, have it nice and even and not get too many stroke marks or lines, streaks. So these smaller areas are much easier to do that. And if the direction of the lines didn't really matter, I'd always choose to do the shortest area that I can in the one direction. Okay. So this just happens to be that, you know, the folds of the fabric are going up and down, so really I need to try and keep all my strokes going in that direction, because then it's going to suggest the folds in the fabric much more, in a much more natural manner, I guess. And you can see I'm going over the lines a little bit there, but that will get disguised when I work out whatever colour I'm going to have on there. And if all else fails, I'll bring out the white acrylic paint pen, reinstate the white area with a paint pen. So So a little bit of ASMR here. Hopefully it doesn't sound like nails on a blackboard for you, or chalkboard. I know sometimes these sounds come across very differently on a video. Okay. Normally I'd be moving the book around at this stage, but it's a little bit difficult to do that when you're videoing. I'll never get it back into frame. Start moving the book too much. Now you see I've got the wobbles going on a little bit there, so where I'm going over the same area, it's obviously going to be a bit darker. Luckily it's in a fold. But if you feel like you need to do a little bit of a touch up, just use the barest, lightest touch of the nib and get the tiniest amount of colour out of your marker as you can to touch that up. Okay, so we'll see how that dries. Too sure, is that the jacket there or is that the skirt? I'm thinking I'm going to treat it as the jacket. She's got a nice long tail behind her. Lovely tight little jacket there. Okay, and I think I'll do the bow in that colour the same as the skirt. I'm thinking that she'll have either a cream or a off-white blouse. Same for the cuffs on the jacket. Not too sure whether I'll have her hat the same colour as the skirt or whether I'll go for a contrast with that. Yeah, I think I might do that lighter. There's a colour in the Faber-Castell connector pens here, which is it looks like a cream, but it's actually quite yellow. But it's a good sort of basic colour that works with a lot of other colours. So I'm going to go around in that direction with the hat. If it was a straw hat, it would have lines in it, so that kind of indicates that that's the direction that the lines in the hat would go. I'll see how it dries. If I don't like how it dries, I can come back with the water brush and just try and smooth that out a little bit with the water brush. Also have the option of just putting a bit of pencil over it at the end as well. I've just realised that I've missed his little pocket there. I think that, yep, that's his pocket that has a handkerchief coming out of it. Okay. Now, you can see there how that pen is still continuing to separate and bleed, and how the colours are slightly different as well when it separates and bleeds. I didn't know that it was going to do that, or that precisely. So that's just something that I will have to go with and, you know, work with as I go along. Okay, let's let that dry a little bit again. We'll come back to Mr. Fogarty. I'm thinking that I'd really like his jacket to sort of stand out and not be complementary to the colours that he's wearing there. So I think I might like I'd really like a mustard sort of colour, but I know that I don't have that colour in the connector pens. I've also, this isn't a full set that I've got in here. Some of my colours have started to run out. And I do have a new set put aside, but I just haven't gone and got those colours out yet. So instead of gold, I've decided that this colour, which I'm really not sure what to call it, perhaps it's maybe camel colour maybe. So I've decided that I quite like how that colour works with this unusual shade of blue here. So I'm still generally going strokes in that same direction, but I'm not being so careful about it. And I'm also going to work quite heavily. I'm really soaking that paper now. But I want that to be quite a solid colour at this stage. And I've got that bit of bleed through there that's coming off of his jacket, but I think as I go along later I might be able to use a bit of purple pencil maybe to suggest a shadow, or it might even look like a shadow on its own by the time that all dries up. Okay, and I think that he's going to have shoes in that colour as well, because that tends to suggest to me that they would be leather, you know, that nice warm leather, tan leather look shoes. Now I'm not going to bother going around those eyelets in the shoes, it's just too fiddly. And sometimes I get tempted when there's a line like that through there that these have to be two different colours. And I know that there were some shoes like that way back when, but I'm just going to do that one colour. And I want this area here where the eyelets and the laces are to be a little bit lighter, because that will get a bit highlighted later. So I'm going over that to darken it up, and I'll come over here and I'll match that up on this shoe. See how that dries up. And at this stage I don't really want to use black. I'm going to use this Anko marker here. This is just sort of like a dark grey. I'd save using black till the very end when I need the darkest of darks. If I can get away with a dark grey, charcoal grey, I prefer not to have black itself on a page too often. That's just a personal preference. If I can get away with the charcoal grey, I'll do that, but if I get too involved in the rest of the page and that's all really dark and his shoes look silly, I might have to bring the black in then. Now, I was going to use that fine tip there. I don't know if you can actually see that. But I let my 5-year-old granddaughter play with these markers, and I think she might have had a bit of trouble getting the lid back on that one. Okay, so I've got this other grey pen here. What I'm going to do is just carefully, because that is very damp still, do those in a dark colour. Okay, I might have to stop the video here. I'm not well up on editing skills yet, so I think this is about long enough for one part, so I might actually upload this in a series of parts rather than trying to do it all at once. Okay, so that's how far I am along on this one. and I'll come back and see you in part 2. Bye.